All right. So I am so happy to introduce one of our two speakers tonight. First, we have Cindy Tysinger. She is a visionary leader who is leading the way by building businesses that are a force for good, creating a better tomorrow for current and future generations. She's establishing a mindful marketplace of conscious small businesses, products, and services to allow us to collaborate and rise together. The Purchase with Purpose program allows customers to generously pay it forward by sharing the love, showing kindness, and caring for people, animals, and our planet through regenerous cares, making a positive impact through regenerative and generous practices with transparency and integrity is their core value. So, Cindy, we're so happy to have you with us tonight.
Thank you so much. It's an honor, Tracy. I've worked with TW in many different projects and programs, and I've been at networking events. I've been a student. I've been a presenter of different workshops, and it's always an honor. I know all of these fabulous women on this group here. Excited to share my entrepreneurial journey and around the topics of the alternative entities, and that is a direction that I chose to go. So if we're good to start, Tracy, I'll go ahead and bring up the presentation.
That'll be great.
Perfect. Just wanted to make sure we're ready to go. So, okay. As Tracy said, I'm Cindy Love Tysinger, and thank you for that introduction, Tracy. I love the topic here, and although I haven't been doing as much in out and about in the community as I used to because of my businesses, I love it. Always being with amazing women that are so powerful and strong. And I wanted to share with you my journey of entrepreneurial. You can probably call me a serial entrepreneur once I show you the next slide. So here we go. Let's go find out about alternative business entities. So with my first walk, here's a reason that I said that. If you start at the bottom, in 1990, I actually owned a restaurant for a couple years. My background is technology for 43 years. So you can imagine I started at a very young age, the age of 16, in civil service, in software development and programming. So we're talking a long, long time ago. And with that, I stepped out of technology for a short amount of time thinking, I'm going to dip my toe in entrepreneurial. I love passion of cooking, nice wine, sitting around a table, having conversations. So that was a kind of a dream destiny, and I enjoyed it. I'll have to say it was back in Virginia, my home state where I'm from, and I started that one. And although it could seat up to 100, it was a restaurant on the lake with I could go to work by boat. I thought that was quite cool, and also just having flexibility. I was homeschooling two children at the time, so that added some complexity of me wanting to be able to have some flexibility than the corporate job. So I did do that, and then ended up after those first 2 years just going, it's challenging being an entrepreneur. And what I realized then, especially I've came out of more professional roles, I was 25 years Department of Defense in technology and 13 years in private and public industries in technology. So when I went into the restaurant business and trying to hire, dishwashers and wait staff, and no judgment there, it's just sometimes they just wouldn't show up and you needed someone to wash dishes that night. So I guess it was me. So after a couple of years, I'm like, I don't think this is the right route for me. I enjoyed it and I loved every moment. So I started, as I shared, 25 years in Department of Defense, all the way from a very beginning programmer to network engineering to very high-level management in the 17 years Department of Navy and 8 years Department of Army. So a lot of different projects and teams that I worked with and supervised. And then I left there in the year of 2000 and moved to Texas, actually. That's what brought me here, was a job. And I took a position, the Chief Technology Officer, or Chief Information Officer, I prefer. And that was for a supplement company in wellness and utilizing healing products with aloe. I had had tremendous health challenges growing up, and I was always looking for ways for healing, so I had a very strong passion for that. So I came in a startup, and we grew it to over 400 million, opened 26 countries, and expanding the product line all around aloe, though. So that was 13 years, and I'm grateful for all that experience because it led me into my next venture. So, and in 2008, which was a very difficult time, if many of you remember the financial crisis that was going on in that year, I started a tech company called Gisati. And that's Global Solutions and Technology Incorporated. We started in September of 2008, so next month marks our 18th year, and I'm so grateful and honored that I had the experience. We grew the company to about 44 employees, our staff between contractors and employees, and we were located in the downtown Denton Square in the Texas building with the second floor, beautiful view of the courthouse. And of course, we all know what happened in 2000, so we have since moved away from that building and are all remote now because that's what we needed to do in 2000. So with Gisati, I took the large company that I was the chief technology officer of, and we utilize a lot of the technology skills that we had in business and tech and moved into that line of business in my own company, Gisati. So we did very large e-commerce platforms, multilingual, multi-currency, very high-end, complex enterprise developments, multi-million-dollar contracts, and that was a really great work. And I started it with my two adult sons who are now running the company, and I am the chairwoman of the board. So I stepped away in 2017, which brings us to the new company, the next company of my entrepreneurial. So the first one was an S Corp. And the reason we picked S Corp, which I'll be going into more details about them, is because of the pass-through of taxes. And I was the majority owner in the beginning, and then my sons and I owned the company. Lo and behold, you never know when things happen. I had won a beautiful grant from the Women Presidents Organization and Women's Business Council Southwest, and that was to bring women-owned businesses to scale to the next level. I was about a $4 million company, and I had won this grant and this award to go to Harvard and to help me scale Gisati. Well, I got a vision while I was there. Can't never explain how that occurred, but somehow I got a vision to create Regenerous while I was at Harvard. And Regenerous is regenerative and generous in everything we do, such as what Tracy was sharing. I started that in 2017 as a limited liability corporation, and with the focus of a certified B Corp, which I'll be talking about. And in that company, which is still running today, I am the Chief Culture Officer, founder and owner, and Chief Culture Officer. So in 2021, I was continuing to send 4% of all products and services sales to about 50 nonprofits, many in Denton, many around the world. So instead, what I chose to do is fund our own nonprofit. And so we started a 501c3 nonprofit, me as being the chief caring officer and owner of Regenerous Cares. And those are all active, and I'll talk about them in a little bit. I just want to show you the entrepreneurial journey. And in 2025, I started a new company called, it's another limited liability company and a spiritual visionary. As I have moved through my life and grateful for everything that I have been blessed with, I have chose to do more and more work in the philanthropy and working in helping our world become a better place. So that's where my heart is, and I am following that path. So that's a little bit about my journey and why I'm speaking to you about different entities today. So the first thing that I would advise, if you haven't already started your company, or you're considering starting a company, you have started one, or perhaps you're looking at a different strategy, this is what I just wanted to open with. A business plan is your vision. So it's really important to make sure you have a really great solid vision plan, because as you form your entities and you're starting to work that, this is going to be your roadmap to help you get your funding, to help you get, strategic partnerships, relationships, what are your strengths, your weaknesses, and your opportunities and your threats. So I took all my years of corporate background and always made sure I had a well-defined business plan before I started. That helped with getting any loans that I needed. It helped with getting investors and employees and so forth. We were very transparent and a very authentic company, and very open. So it's important to know that you have a very solid business plan. And I know TW teaches you a lot of this. I highly encourage you to utilize all the resources that you have available to you that are phenomenal. So let's just talk a little bit about understanding the entity setups. So of course we couldn't go into the alternatives without mentioning the traditionals. So the C Corp and the S Corp. As I shared with you, I started Jasati as a S Corp. And the reason I'd made that decision back then was the information I'll be sharing on the other pages is the double taxation and other things that I chose that I did not want to go towards. And so we're going to talk about C Corps and S Corps, the limited liability corporations and LPs, and then we'll move into nonprofits, 501c3, 501c6, and certified benefit corporations. So starting with building a strong business foundation for C Corp versus S Corp, I just wanted to provide you a little bit of information of the pros and cons. There's always goods and bads to everything. So having that business plan is what's going to help you determine what is your entity strategy of what would serve your highest good based upon knowing who your customers are, knowing, are you doing a product or a service? Is it philanthropy? There's a lot of things that you would want to have decided before you leap in choosing an entity. Know that you can grow from that, and I'll show you how I have done that in the presentation today. But C Corp and LLC is both a legal entity, whereas which you file IRS taxes directly as the company, whereas an S Corp is one that's a tax status election, and you actually file it with your personal taxes. So that is something that I wanted to let you know. The S Corp is a pass-through, so losses and gains flow through your personal taxes, and you are taxed accordingly to your profit and loss of that. So one of the things to know about it is the double taxation I talked about. Is what that means is the business pays the corporate taxes, but also if you're a shareholder and you receive dividends, you must pay dividend taxes on distributions. And that is how come they call it double tax. It does have unlimited shareholders and does permit outside international investors as well. On the other side, on the LLCs, the pass-through taxation, the pictures are in the way, so I'm trying to get them out of the way. The pass-through taxation, business profits and losses pass through the shareholder personal tax, which is what I was talking about on the S Corp. It's restricted to 100 or less shareholders, so if you're wanting to grow it very, very large with a lot of shareholders, you could start an S Corp and move out into a Corp and then public or private, whichever you're feeling. However, you are restricted to 100 or less shareholders, and they must be U.S. citizens or permanent residents. So that's a little different. If you have any international investors or friends in those, that is something that you would need to decide there. A sip of water. Okay, whoops, did it go the right way? All right, here's the LLCs and LPs. So both of these or limited liability. So again, this is where you as the owner want to make sure you are doing the best you can to limit your liability based upon the success of the business or the failure of the business. So of course, we all want to be very successful, and there are times in a business life where things can be challenging, so you want to make sure you can limit your liability if that's something you would like to look into. So the LLC is managed by members, the owners, or designated managers. And there's limited liability exposure on entity debts, meaning that if the business has debts, it does not pass down directly to you as the owner with the protection of the LLC. The members can actively manage the business, and taxes are a pass-through on personal taxes. So just as my Gisotti, I have a K1, as they called it, the tax form for Gisotti, I also have a K1 for my LLCs that go all on my personal taxes. Then you have the limited partnerships, which is another option, and that's running strictly through general partners. Limited partners are passive investors, and it's critical to know that. If you have your general partners that have invested a lot of money, and then you have a limited partner that has not invested as much equally, and they're considered a limited partner, they cannot be active in the business. So you have to watch that. And, I had children running in the business with me. They were adults at the time, but still I wanted to make sure that they could be actively engaged in the business. So know that difference when you're making that choice from LLC or LP. The next one, which is now moving into the differences where mine is, let me see if I can get this to flip, is nonprofits. So 501c3 and 501c6 are both tax exempt, granted by the IRS. They serve different public purposes and operate under distinct tax and advocacy rules. So Regenerous Cares is a 501c3, and it does serve the general public on broad charity, whereas a 501c6 promotes a common business interest of a specific industry or trade. So a good example of this is my business right down the, I had Regenerous Cares in the Texas building. Right down the hall was the Denton Main Street Association, and that was a 501c6. And I was very involved in the association, and that is where that makes sense. Chambers and chambers of commerce, trade associations, just noticed a typo, and professional boards. So 501c3 is what we chose as charitable, education, religious or scientific, and literacy. It has a public benefit for underserved groups. All deductions that anyone makes to the nonprofit are tax deductible. Huge benefit when you're trying to raise funds to do the work that you're wanting to do. Interesting. The Microsoft Teams meeting just shut me off, Tracy. I was like, what? Sorry. So for raising donations, and we raised quite a bit of money, not only from Regenerous donating 4% of all products and services, but we had donations coming from around the United States and in other countries. So we chose the tax deductible donations for that reason. And then the 501c6, as I was saying, is business leagues, chambers of commerce, trade associations, and professional boards. So non-tax deductible, that was the reason I didn't choose C6. So as I was a member of the Denton Main Street, as well as the Chamber of Commerce, the dues are deductible as ordinary business expenses, not charitable. So just know that going into it, if you choose, when you're wanting to raise money, the 501c3 is easier to do than a C6, which is good for an organization that's all aligned around a specific program or a project and so forth. So I chose 501c3. Let's talk about the next unusual thing, or alternative thing, is a certified benefit corporation. So this is something that's newer, although I started tracking it in 2017. I went to my first social capitalism meeting in San Francisco in September of 2017, and that was when I was just discovering I was starting Regenerous, as I shared with you. In August of 2017 was when I was at Harvard at that business school for my tech company, and I decided to start a new company, Regenerous. So then I wanted to learn about conscious capitalism, wanted to learn about how do I start a company that's for good. So I learned about B Corp. Now, B Corp is not an IRS designation. People get confused with that, thinking that it is. And it is not. It is actually, it's a designation by each state, and not all states have a benefit corporation designation. And it is a process that I'm going to talk about when I walk you through Regenerous and what we did. But let's talk a little bit about what is a certified benefit corporation. It converts your legal company, it alters your corporate governance structure by state law, depending upon what that state law is. Regenerous is incorporated in Delaware. So Delaware has specific laws to create a benefit company or a benefit corporation. So I worked directly with, you have an application to become a certified B Corp. You work with a nonprofit called B Lab, and they are an independent third-party validation, and they look at everything. You want to be really scrutinized, here's where it happens. So they look at all of your social, your environmental, your performance, your accountability, and your transparency. Everything is honed, every policy, every procedure, everything is looked at very closely. So benefit corporations are certified B Corps, as I said, is not an IRS designation. So if it's something you're interested, you must realize it varies by state, and not all states have a B certified benefit corporation as an offering. After you modify your operating agreement, then that is what sets in motion how your board members make decisions and must be approved with wording. So, in the public place, which I was with the $400 million company, you were always talking to your shareholders, right? And your shareholders were dictating a lot about the company and where it's going, not your customers. So that was a big challenge for me when I started Regenerous, because I was looking for how can I be authentic and transparent. And when you've got to be the owner to make the hard decision, I want to give money to this need for a nonprofit or so forth, and a board is going to go, no, we need more money in profit for the shareholders. I was going to have a challenge with that, and I knew that. So that's why I chose to go toward the B Corp status. It takes time to do this. I just want to let you know. So although you can set your intention for that, it is begin with the end in mind, as I started here, because there's a process to become a certified benefit corporation. So the core benefits is your independent brand credibility. Many of you can look on the product bottles or websites and you see this certified B Corp status. You know there that there's no greenwashing. You don't have to worry about any of those, because how closely they are looked at and monitored, and you have to recertify. You're evaluated annually, but you have to actually reapply every 3 years. So it's significant amount of input that they have to make sure that you are representing a conscious business, and that you're not greenwashing anything. You're truly being the face of the company that you say you are. Businesses must score 80 points out of a possible 200. And I will tell you the failure rate of starting, I was trying to remember when I started was 2020, and I applied in January of 2020 and I received it in January of 2021. And through that whole year, we were continually going through learning about the points. They said generally over 50 to 60% do not pass on the first time. And you must have at least 80 points to even start the application. After everything's been audited, then you apply, and then they come and validate. They send people to come look at your business and so forth. So we were blessed, though, because I worked with amazing university students that were working on understanding certified B Corps, and they had a program at the university, and so they wanted to help women-owned small businesses be certified. And it was through UCF Florida. I was in Texas. However, I reached out to them, just like we women do. You just all they can do is say no, And I just asked if it was, were they taking any companies that were outside of the state? And so they said they weren't initially. However, they did take a look at my website and absolutely invited us to come in. We had the most amazing, we had 6 interns. They were all college students in their master's programs, wanting to work with do good businesses and all of that. So I have to really give a lot of credibility and how this program fell with us is to these amazing students and the coordinators such as Tracy and those that are on this call that run the programs. They were phenomenal to work with. But they want to make sure they're separating genuine impact businesses from superficial ones. So access to capital is another huge benefit for being a certified B Corp. A lot of portfolios are requiring impact businesses as part of the portfolios. Right now, there's over 8,000 certified B Corps. In 2020, just to give you an instance, there was less than 2,000, and there was only 6 in Texas at that time. You think of how big Texas is. So there was only 6, and I know it was Austin. There was none. I was the first Denton. I was the first Dallas. So it was really interesting how it all worked. But it's all around doing business together, cross-promoting, and forming supply chain partnerships with other certified entities. They have a lot of really great programs, conferences, so you get to meet many of the other certified B Corps and find where you have consistent brands that may benefit from each other, sharing their products across their customers, and many other ways to do business together, saving on shipping costs. There was a lot of great conversations. So let's talk Regenerous. Regenerous is regenerative and generous. I've spoken on some of this, so it'll go really fast. It was founded in August of 2017. A month before that, I was told I was going to be a grandmother for the first time, and I go by Nona. And I was like, what does this world look like for my grandsons and future generations? So that was when I walked away and stepped away from my roots of technology and said, something has to be done. So I formed Regenerous. I, from the get-go, donated 4% of all sales, even when we weren't profitable, to charity, and that included products and services. When I researched the B Corp, I started that, as I shared with you, in 2017. I joined social capitalism. I joined conscious capitalism events. There's a great local Dallas chapter I was involved with for years. I filed my first certification in January of 2020. I filed for the application of it. It took 1 year from the initial application to certification. And so excited to share with you, the first year in 2021, after we completed, we were in the top 10% of all B Corps in the world. And when we finished our application, we had 106 points when we went into the application, and we came out, we had 128, because they actually gave us more points, because I was being being real careful not to want anything to come out, that might be, no, we're not sure if that would qualify or not. So I kind of took the route of being more cautious. And when you look at the categories across B Corp, they look at governance, your workers, your community, how's your community engagement, how are you working with the environment, and your customers. They talk to your employees, they talk to your customers. They do everything to make sure that you're a valid company and you should receive this classification. So I became very active. I helped found We the Change Women's Alliance and Pledge, where we were the certified B Corp women owned. We worked together looking for access to capital for women. So there was a lot of things we were doing. My business continued to prosper, and I opened in 2022 the Regenerous Wellness Center to offer more services, because we originally started as a product company. And then in 2024, I opened the Regenerous Academy to offer wellness certifications in energy healing. So here's my nonprofit. So as I shared with you in 2021, that was a big year for us. We became certified B Corp in January, and in August of 2021, we formed regenerouscares.org. So we were looking at ways to truly make a difference, and we have been working nonstop ever since. We have so far donated more than $50,000 to nonprofits in need around the world. We have ventured out with what we called wellness events or wellness journeys. We went to Puebla, Mexico, where there were 100 children that were orphans, and they had a school there, and we went and worked at the school. We brought children, we taught wellness, we taught yoga, a lot of healing, a good, proper nutrition. So we also went to Rwanda, and that we went in 2022. November of 2022, and that was incredible. There we brought solar powered lights, water filters, clothes, supplies. There are over 200 children at that in Rwanda that we were working with, and we went to all the villages to bring them like water filters for their wells and things, and it was just really truly life-changing, as you can imagine. So, but our focus now, because of my last company, which I was on that last board, which I didn't really go into, is She Who Speaks with God. That is my spiritual company, Visionary. And we moved into taking the Reiki and the healing energy that I have moved into. I was a customer of Reiki healing for a long time, and then I became a Reiki healer, teacher, and master. And I know energy healing is so very important in our lives as humans, but also on the earth. So changing frequency and vibration of what's going on in the world can truly help us come from a better place and get along and find ways to come together. And that is something that I'm very pro for. So we started working on planet Earth. We would go and do cleanups on the Earth. We would do things with water, many, many things to work. So we use Regenerous Cares as a nonprofit for our customers to donate. They go on trips with us, so they'll make their donations. That helps pay for the trips, the flights and the hotels and things where we travel around the world. We have been in many locations already, Hawaii a few times. We are getting ready to go to Japan in November to bring this type of healing. And we have been in Canada, many states of the United States, working in this area. So I know that many of this is just a client that I really, really love. She's very involved with it. And those that we call them the Earth Keepers to help us with the mission with Mother Earth and all the resources that depend upon us, on her, humans being one. But she wrote, "For as long as I remember, it has been my dream to be part of a dedicated, specialized human team that lives, works, and travels together, united in a mission to support the renewal of Mother Earth in places where she needs it most." So we're like going to the Amazon and places that truly do need some help. And we're going to Brazil, and I'm just so excited. So now you kind of understand. I moved from this really tech field to really in my heart space of doing the business that I love. But I've utilized all these entities. So here's just a brief picture of the Rwanda school. There was 200 children, but this is one of the classes that came out and took a picture. And this is us engaging with the children. Everything we brought with us is on the floor there in the center. And there was so much joy. One day we peeled 500 potatoes just to feed the school and the children. So that was a feat. So I think that is the last slide. This is me and the bamboo in Hawaii, on Kauai, and we were doing work there. And mine that I would just depart with you is we have but one precious life to live now. When my time on earth is over, I want it to be remembered by family and friends for how much I cared about leading a movement in service to a positive world change of compassion, unity, love, and peace for people, animals, and our planet. And with that, I'll turn it over for any questions.
Okay, we have a few questions here, but thank you so much because you really went through so many different business entities there. And many of them I know people don't know that much about. So Christine had a question. She'd been looking at the B Corp in Texas, and when completing, I think I lost part of that one there. And when completing the B Lab application, she doesn't know if she is too young. When is a good time to apply?
Oh, I love that question. Great, great question. So I was in business. Gosh, I think we opened our doors for selling was in 2018. So I was in business 3 years before I applied. And of course, the rules are changing. Certified B Corp, they recently changed their rules of applying and who qualifies. So I'm not as familiar with the newer ones because I did forget to mention, I noticed when I moved into more of my grid work and the work that I'm doing now, I chose not to renew my certified B Corp status. So with Regenerous, and I love it. I think it's really very beneficial. So I'm not saying that for a reason to not. It's just if I was growing Regenerous only, it would make sense for me to continue that path. So I would recommend a good couple of years of business because they need to audit it. And if you don't have enough information for them to make a conscious decision of how you're going to act, because they look back and then, your future projections of what you're planning. So I would say probably want to have a good at least 2 years before you start, but talking to B Lab or them, they may have other guidance too. But I was glad I had 3 years under my belt.
Okay, great. Thank you. Letitia had two questions. First, can a 501c3 become a B Corp? Um,
The answer to that is no. You have to be a for-profit company.
okay. And then how does a B Corp get funding?
Yes, so that is a benefit of the B Corp. There's so many investment agencies out there that fund impact businesses. So you then go to the investors. That's where 2 years of business can be very beneficial because you have a track record. You can show what your customers, what your profit and loss statements are, your balance sheet, and so forth. So that is with. I was just trying to think with that one. I just lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry, Tracy.
That's okay.
Ask it one more time.
This was the one, how does
Oh,
it
the
get
investment.
funded? Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. Yes. So there's many out there. If you just search conscious conscious investment firms, they're listed. So there's many. If you join Conscious Capitalism or like join the B Corp and go to any of their conferences, they have representatives there to help you with financing.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Savannah wanted to know, so a B Corp needs a board. Can you talk a little bit about what that entails?
Yes. So you must have advocacy officer. So you're used to the traditional chief marketing, finance, usually the CEO, technology. So the things that you would normally have in your business divisions, excuse me. However, you must also have someone responsible for the social impact of it, the advocacy officer or the social impact that you're doing. So you usually, just like a corporate board, you'd want to meet once a year for your corporate records. If you can meet quarterly, depending upon your business, that is really good. And it all just depends upon your business model. But it's very similar to working with any of the entities. However, when decision comes down to what's greatest good as a B Corp, benefiting people, animals of the planet, or more bottom line profit into your owners, that is when you need to stand in your truth and make the right decision. And that's the board's decision to do that.
Okay, great info. All right, any more questions? Okay, well, okay, so Rosie says, if I start a 501c company doing speech therapy for underserved population, could I pay myself or other therapists? Could you see a benefit to doing a 501c versus just continuing to do therapy pro bono versus 501c?
Interesting. Okay, my 501c3 is not our services. That is Regenerous. So my for-profit company does all services. When we do the 501c3 work, like the grid work, or we go on the journeys, wellness journeys to help in orphanages, those are all volunteer-based. There's nobody on salary. We raise the funding through donations and then make up the difference personally. So we don't do services through our 501c3. So I'm not familiar much with the law, so I wouldn't want to mislead anybody.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. All right. This has been such great information and so many different entities that we talked about. Thank you so much, everyone. Let's say big thank you to Cindy for this.
You're so, so welcome. And Tracy, I noticed a couple little typos. I'll fix them and I'll send you one. You
Oh,
can send it out to the group.
it happens.
Yeah. I appreciate it. I'm honored to have been on, and I'm looking forward to listening to Katie.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to bring Katie on next. Yeah, I've got her. I'm going to spotlight her now. Well, there's Katie.
Hello.
All right.
I'm having a little technical challenge here. For some reason, the internet kicked me off the Zoom link, so I'm joining from my phone now.
Okay, because I saw you leave. I saw you come back in, and I was like, "Uh-oh, this is not the night for that."
No,
Well, we understand if something happens. So I want to introduce our next speaker. This has been great so far, that we learn about so many different businesses or business types that most people aren't that familiar with. So next we have Katie Novak, owner of Cooperative Coach and CoApp. She is also a CWE Accelerator graduate, so we love that too. Katie helps startup grocery cooperatives turn big ideas into thriving community-owned businesses. Through cooperative coaching, she provides consulting on capital campaigns, owner growth, and engagement and strategic planning. She also co-founded CoApp, a purpose-built CRM designed specifically for startup grocery cooperatives to streamline owner recruitment, fundraising, and campaign management. Since 2017, Katie has helped startup co-ops raise more than 11.6 million while equipping cooperative leaders with the tools and guidance to build successful community-owned grocery stores. So, Katie, we're so glad to have you. We're going to turn it over to you now. Can you get slides?
yes, I'm going to have you use our slides if I could, Tracy, since I'm having some technical difficulties here.
Okay. Well, if you want to say a little bit about you while I'm finding that.
Yeah, well, Tracy's pulling that up. I just want to say how happy I am to be here and how excited I am to talk with you all. I'll give you a little bit of my background as Tracy talked about the two businesses I currently have. I started my career in the insurance industry with State Farm Insurance and have had the privilege of working in the for-profit world, the nonprofit world, and now in the cooperative world. And so what we're going to talk about today is another entity choice you have when thinking about your business. So Tracy, it looks like I can see the slides there. Are we good to go?
Yeah. I
Awesome.
was trying to see if I could unpin you now while I'm doing this.
Okay.
I don't, there it is. There we go.
Okay.
And so let's bring it back to me. I don't see it full screen yet. Is that full screen on yours or not?
It does not look full screen to me, but I'm on my phone. So
Okay. Well, it doesn't to me either. So that's what I thought. Okay. If you keep speaking, I'll try to figure out how to get it full screen. I have it.
well, that's good. We have the slides, so we might not see them how we intend for them to be seen, but we have them. So we'll deal with this the fun and joy of technology glitches as we all encounter here. So what we're going to talk about today in the next few minutes is an additional entity choice you have when you're thinking about starting a business, and that entity is cooperative. So we're kind of going to dive into, what a co-op is, how they operate, and talk a little bit about if that might be the right entity choice for the business or organization that you are attempting to start.
Katie, could you wait just a minute? Tracy, I have the slides. Would you like me to bring them up for you? Since I'm the tech girl.
Better on yours, yes.
Yeah, I could share my screen, Katie, so we'll have the full slides. You just tell me next slide, okay?
Awesome. Thank you.
You're so welcome. I just realized I had a copy of it. I was trying to help Tracy.
Okay, thank you.
There you go. Next slide.
That's perfect. Yes, thank you. So I can tell already, Cindy and I have had the pleasure of working together via email. This will be the first time we've talked to each other, seen each other in person, but I can tell by her history and her willingness to cooperate that she and I are like-minded. And
Yes.
today is talking to you about different kinds of businesses where we can help each other and not compete with each other. So thank you, Cindy. Thank you. But let's talk about what a co-op is. So I use the term co-op in exchange for the longer word cooperative. So a cooperative is an entity. It is a form of business, but it's just like any other business. It is typically formed by a group of people to meet a shared need. So a co-op on the surface looks like any other business. It's when you look behind the curtain that you see the differences in that business. What you'll see when you peel that curtain back is that there is shared ownership. So instead of one person or a few people owning a company, it can be thousands of people owning a company with shared ownership. And the difference in a co-op as compared to a stock company is that shared ownership is equal. So in a cooperative, the voting structure is one member, one vote. In a for-profit company, the number of stock you have determines how many votes you have and what control you have of the company. So in a cooperative, it is a form of autonomy or equality that we each have the same vote. And as voting members of the business, we democratically control the business. So a co-op has a board of directors, and that board is elected by its members, and we collectively make decisions that impact the organization. So on the surface, a co-op is the exact same as every other business, but you're going right ahead, Cindy. You were right on target there. What's happening behind the scenes, as I mentioned, is what's different. And so we talked about the ownership structure, but co-ops also operate under 7 standard principles. So I'm not going to go through and bore you by reading these to you, but these are principles that many of us operate under in our normal lives, like autonomy and independence, concern for our community, education. These are the founding principles that govern a cooperative business. We'll move on to the next slide. There are lots of different kinds of businesses, and these kinds of businesses have been in existence since early civilization, since ancient civilization. We have historical documentation of agricultural cooperatives, of building cooperatives. We think about indigenous people coming together to meet shared needs. And we know that transcends into more recent history when we see the enslaved people of America forming mutual aid societies where they would take care of each other in times of tragedy. So, for example, if a family member would pass away, these mutual aid societies would help cover insurance costs or care for orphans. And that translates even more recently in history to electric cooperatives. So in rural America, once upon a time, we didn't all have electricity. And rural cooperatives were formed by community members coming together to meet a shared need to bring electricity to rural America. So there is a long-standing history of cooperation in the United States, and that cooperation takes lots of different forms. We've got purchasing cooperatives, so that's groups of people coming together to leverage their buying power so they can buy at a better price. Housing cooperatives where land is owned jointly and multiple people can live on that land and operate the housing. Credit unions are an excellent example of cooperation, and not many of us even recognize that they are co-ops. Yet I'm guessing some of us on this call, if not a lot of us on this call, have been or are members of co-ops. And then there are consumer co-ops, like REI, for example, where you can go into a store and as a member, you get better deals on products that are in the store. And then there are things like worker-owned co-ops where the workers benefit and own the company, and marketing co-ops too. So the next slide here has some examples of some cooperatives that we probably didn't even know were co-ops, that we see in our own daily lives. So we talked about the fact that credit unions are a cooperative, and there are lots of credit unions here in Texas, and many of us are members of them. REI, as I mentioned, is a consumer co-op. Austin, Texas has a grocery co-op. Wheatsville Co-op's been in existence for since the 70s. And it's a grocery store where anyone can shop and be a member and benefit from pricing. And then Ace Hardware is a cooperative. That's a purchasing co-op. Not many of us know that or recognize that, but a purchasing co-op, the people who own the individual Ace Hardware stores are members of a purchasing co-op. And so they leverage buying power so that they compete with other big box stores. And then Blue Diamond Almonds, which we probably have seen on the shelves of our local grocery store, is a farmer co-op. So the farmers who grow and harvest the almonds own that co-op and distribute those almonds to those grocery stores. So they're more prevalent than we think they are, and they are a part of everyday life. There are some benefits to organizing as a co-op. And in Texas, when you do choose to organize as a co-op, I love the slides that Cindy shared because they kind of play into what we're going to talk about here today. When you organize as a co-op in Texas, you have two options. You can form an LLC with cooperative bylaws. So you basically agree to operate under the cooperative principles and to the one member, one vote philosophy. Or if you have 10 members when you start your co-op, which, 10 is a lot, and sometimes we're not in the position to do that initially. If you have 10 members, you can form a legal entity of a co-op in Texas. So there is actual entity formation allowed in Texas as a co-op, but you do have to have that 10-member mark. So if you're not at 10 members yet and you're interested in starting as a co-op, it's the LLC with cooperative values. But there's some financial benefits to forming a new entity as a co-op. Patronage being one of them. So patronage are the funds that the organization raises in excess of their expenses, so your profits. And those profits are divided amongst the co-op members based on how much they either use or participate in the co-op. So in the form of the grocery co-op that I mentioned in Austin, Texas, when you're a member of that co-op and the co-op is profitable, at the end of the year, when they pay dividends, your dividend is dependent on how much you shopped. So the more you shop, the bigger your dividend. In a worker co-op, when profits are earned, those profits are shared amongst the co-op owners, depending on how much they work. So it's a very equal distribution of those funds, and it keeps dollars circulating locally. It keeps the business and the dollars local. That also creates jobs. So when we have these businesses locally, we are creating jobs for our own community members. The incorporation as a co-op, either as an LLC or as a co-op, comes with some legal protections, just as in the entities that Cindy described. Your liability can be limited depending on the entity that you choose. And either entity limits the liability to the organization itself, not to its members. And in addition, this gives us the opportunity to share the risk and reward of starting a business. So in my world, my experience is primarily with grocery co-ops. And in the grocery co-op world, grocery co-ops have thousands of owners. That example I've shared with you in Austin, Texas, Wheatsville has probably 30 or 40,000 members. And so when you're starting a co-op, you have fewer, probably hundreds, maybe 1,000, but it allows you to pull your resources together and share in the risk and the reward of opening a business with your community members, not just on your own. So there are some community benefits as well, and that's what we'll see on the next slide. Oh, actually, we're going to talk about democratic benefits before we get to the community benefits. But the democratic benefits relate to our vote. So as co-op owners, we get a say in how the organization is run. So In the instance of a grocery co-op, when there are hundreds of co-op owners, those hundreds of owners elect a board of directors who are responsible for the policy and procedure to run the grocery store. And it's kind of an interesting thing to think about when we think of a cooperative grocery store, because most of us are used to shopping at probably, Kroger or HEB or something similar to that. And if you pull back the curtain on the big box grocery stores, they really fall under 5 umbrellas. There's 5 different companies that pretty much control the entire grocery industry in the United States, minus a very small fraction of which cooperative grocery stores are one piece of that small fraction. But in the cooperative world, the members who own the co-op have a say in the kind of products in the store, the kind of use of funds. If the store has allocated funds for investment in the community, for example, making donations to local organizations or supporting other entities within the community, those co-op members have a say in what happens. When I shop at Kroger, for example, nobody at Kroger asks me what I think they should do with their profits. But in the co-op world, as a co-op owner, I get a say in what happens with the co-op's profits, which I think is pretty cool. The same applies in cooperation amongst co-op grocery stores. So one of the cooperative principles are co-ops helping co-ops. And so when that grocery store in Wheatsville, that grocery store in Austin called Wheatsville, when it has an issue or a problem that it encounters, it can call another co-op in the country, across the country, and say, hey, have you ever encountered this problem? And those co-ops help each other. They don't compete with each other. They support each other and build each other up, which I think is a pretty cool practice in the cooperative world. But our vote as co-op members allows us to approve bylaw changes and organizational structure. And when we think about the for-profit world, nobody at Microsoft or Amazon is asking me what I think about how they do their business, or if I think they need to change their bylaws or their operating practices. But in the co-op world, we as users of that business get a say. And I think that is a pretty unique way to do business, and one that I'm pretty fond of, but of course I'm biased. But we'll talk about the community benefits of a cooperative now too. And one of the really beneficial things about cooperative businesses are the relationships that are built when we form businesses with each other. So when we come together to do something to improve our community, to solve a problem, to create a business that fills that need, it's a strong bond that gets formed. This is not something that happens overnight. This takes work, just like starting any business. And you really get to know the people that you're doing this with, and you get introduced to other like-minded people who think and operate and process the world like we do. And it's really quite fulfilling. And it is it's a really unique benefit to cooperative development. And it allows us to align our values with our investments. So if you think about putting your investments, starting your business as a cooperative and investing your hard-earned money into that co-op, when we're investing our money, we don't always know what that money's doing. So for example, when you have an investment with Charles Schwab, let's say, we don't always see where that money goes or know what those dollars are doing. But when you invest that money with a co-op, you see it happen. You know exactly what the dollars are doing for your community, and what the return on those dollars are for you financially. And that community investment builds resilience. So when we take control of our local economy, when we have more and more local businesses and more cooperative businesses, the less reliant we are on external factors to influence the economic. Why am I having a loss of words here? When we take control of our local economy, the impact of the greater economy is less. So the fluctuations that happen nationally have less impact on us when we have a strong local economy, when we have strong local businesses, including cooperatives. Okay, so let's move on to the challenges of a cooperative business. I am partial to cooperatives because I've spent the last 12 years of my career helping co-op businesses start and grow. But it's not the easier answer by any means. It's just a different answer. And so if you're looking for a way to solve a community problem that brings your neighbors and your community together, a co-op absolutely might be the right entity for you. But it can make decisions slower. When we're deciding things democratically, it takes a little longer. For example, when you have two partners in a business making decisions, it probably doesn't take too long for those two people to come to a decision in any given circumstance. But when you have 100, let's say, or 200 co-op owners, that decision-making process can take longer, which is why a board of directors exists. So those 200 people elect a board of directors, but then that is still probably 7 to 9 people who collectively make decisions. Now, there are benefits to that collective decision making, just as there are challenges, but it often ends up being an educational process for those board members who are making those decisions. And one of the principles of cooperative development is education. And so those board members have to educate themselves on the decision that's at hand, and then the organization must thoroughly investigate those options and make the decision, which can take a little longer than just, me and my business partner sitting down to decide something. But at the same time, it builds our base, it builds our education, and it allows us to be a stronger organization. I also think it's important to note that these boards take their responsibility as directors of a business very seriously. So they take these decisions to heart and operate for the benefit of the entire cooperative community. So all the owners, and so they take that decision seriously, and that can make things a little bit harder. And it makes balancing that democracy and efficiency a bit of a challenge. So although it can take a little longer, in my opinion, the consensus building end result is a stronger product and allows us to move forward, even if a little slower, with a little more assurance. Capital. Capital is the last challenge that I'll mention for a cooperative business. When we're talking about capital raising for a co-op, oftentimes a bank or a traditional funding organization won't understand what a cooperative is. And in fact, many of you, this might be the first opportunity you've had to learn about what a co-op is. So you can imagine if you went into your local bank and said, hey, I'm starting a co-op and I want you to give me a loan. The bank probably wouldn't know what a co-op is and wouldn't know how to even evaluate if the organization will qualify for a loan. So I can help co-ops raise capital. There are alternatives available to us as cooperators in terms of how we raise capital. But generally speaking, raising funds is a little more challenging in a cooperative business. But there are a lot of co-ops, and the industry is not as small as we might think it is based on our knowledge of co-ops. So if you haven't heard of co-ops, or this is your first introduction to co-ops, you might be surprised to know that there are 30,000 plus cooperative businesses that operate in the United States. And those businesses generate 2 million jobs. So this is not a small industry by any means. The industry raises about $650 billion in revenue every year, and over 350 million Americans, 350 million of us, are members of a co-op, which is pretty impressive when you think about it. Cindy, we'll move on to the next slide, which gives us a little more depth of information about the industry itself. The businesses in the industry generate $75 billion in wages and benefits. And in the cooperative, or I'm sorry, in the credit union sector alone, there are 140 million Americans who belong to a credit union, which is pretty impressive if you ask me. And pardon me, we've talked about electric co-ops a little bit, but electric co-ops service 42 million people with electricity in the United States, which is pretty impressive when you think about the number of us using electricity, especially on hot days like today. And I know my home is serviced by an electric co-op, which I'm very grateful for. But it is no small industry, despite the fact that we might not be as familiar with this form of business as we are with other forms of business. It is an industry that is prevalent in our everyday lives, even though we might not know it is. So we'll go ahead and look at some. Oh, I included this slide because I want you to have a reference here. Um, the Montana Cooperative Development Center created this slide. And this is one of the things I love about co-ops is that they support each other, and they gladly provided authorization to use this slide. But this is a good slide that compares a few of the entities, some of which Tracy has mentioned today, with the cooperative entity, and kind of gives you some parameters by which to evaluate whether or not a co-op might be the best fit for you. So it looks at what ownership structure might look like, what the benefits might be, and some of the things you might think about if you're considering a cooperative entity for your business. So I included that as a point of reference. I know it's a very small slide and likely not real helpful to you visually right now, but I think if you go back through these slides and you want to take a look at them in more detail, it will be helpful for you. So if and when you think that a cooperative might be the right fit for your business, there are lots of resources available to you. I mentioned, and Tracy mentioned at the beginning of the session, that I do consulting work with startup grocery co-ops primarily, in addition to starting a business that is a CRM, a contact relationship management system for co-ops. But in addition to that work, part of my passion is educating folks on what a co-op is. And I've partnered with the Texas Rural Cooperative Development Center to do that, which is one of the reasons why I'm here today. And I'm very grateful to Tracy and to all of you for listening and participating today. But through that partnership with the Rural Cooperative Development Center through the University of Texas, there are lots of resources available to you. So the Rural Cooperative Development Center can help with mentoring. It can help you decide if a co-op is the right entity. So if you need more education, you want to learn more, we'd be happy to connect you with those resources. But there's all kinds of training and financial information we can provide, mentors. We can help you with facilitation skills to bring people together, to start your co-op. There's a lot of support that can be available to groups or entities, individuals who are considering the cooperative model for a business. And the next slide, excuse me, has my contact information on it, as well as Annalise Lotman's contact information. Annalise is the director of the Texas Rural Cooperative Center. And so the links on this page are live. So when you get the slides, you'll be able to click on those links and directly contact me or Tracy if you need additional assistance. But there's lots of other resources that are available to you if a cooperative entity is something that you're interested in, including the Cooperative Business Association. Start.coop is the last one on the list. They have great resources available for starting a co-op business, and as well as a few other links there that can help point you in the right direction. So I'll stop there, Tracy. If we have some questions, I think I saw a few things pop up in the chat.
Yes, so very interesting. Thank you so much. Lindsay asked, what is the difference between a co-op and an ESOP like Bob's Red Mill or King Arthur Flour?
That's a great question. And an employee ownership is a form of co-op. It's like a worker co-op. So we would categorize those as a worker-owned cooperative.
Okay, very good. I don't see any others right now. Okay, Lindsay said you have to live in a rural area to take advantage of the TRCC
No,
resources.
you don't. Good question. Good question. They provide those resources across the state. They just have to be housed under the Rural Cooperative Development Center.
Okay. So thank you for that. Just curious. So are there any like kind of some strange ones or maybe some we wouldn't think of as a co-op? I mean, I keep thinking, what kind of co-op could I start or somebody start besides those regular ones?
Yeah. Let's see here. Let me think of some of them. I recently had a conversation with it's not necessarily weird. The product might be a little unusual for us, but was a video game developer co-op. So the
Okay.
developers, like tech developers, came together and they make video games and they have some pretty high profile clients and
Mhm.
they operate their business as a co-op. So they share equally in the profits depending on how much they work and what projects they're working on. So that's a pretty cool one. Um, there is a CSA, which might be an unusual term, but it's getting a little more popular. It's called a community share of agriculture. And so a farmer will offer a CSA, like, so for example, if I were a farmer, I'd say, okay, I'm going to offer 50 shares of my product to you, to the public. And so as a consumer, Tracy, you could buy a share, let's just say for $100. And every week through the harvest of the season, you would get, a box of fruits and vegetables from that farmer. So that's a model that works individually for one farmer to a group of consumers. But in Austin, a group of farmers have formed a co-op. And so they have a CSA. So they not only me as an individual farmer, but now I have 10 of my friends who are farmers. So I've got a cantaloupe farmer and a tomato farmer and all different kinds of products. And so the customer then benefits because they get more of a variety of product, and the farmers benefit because they are sharing the load of the CSA management because they are pooling their resources to do it together. So that's another local one.
Okay, I love that. And I didn't mean weird, but something out of
Yeah,
context where we might think, because as you start thinking, there are a lot of different things that you could potentially
absolutely.
um, have a co-op.
There are daycare co-ops.
Okay.
Co-ops. There are even transportation co-ops, like Madison, Wisconsin, and New York City both have like Lyft slash Uber slash taxi kinds of services that are co-ops.
That'd be great because
Wouldn't
especially if you use transportation everywhere you went instead of your own.
it? Right.
Okay, I love that. All right. Anybody have any questions? Okay. We've got some. Lindsay's head is turning too. She said my co-op wheels are turning.
Oh,
So
yeah,
if
love it.
somebody has more, then they should definitely reach out to you with more questions and check out all the resources you'll get on there too. It looked like a great list that you had.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to have conversations with anyone who's interested in talking further. Happy to set up a meeting.
Okay, great, because your contact information is on there. And then when we send the information out, we always make sure we have that for both of you as well.
Great.
Okay. Well, thank you, Cindy. We see you as well. Thank you both so much.
Very
And just
welcome.
before we go away, are there any questions for either one of these ladies before we let them go? Um, our heads could be spinning with all these new ideas we come up with all these business formations and business entities that we didn't know were out there. It was so great having both of you on there. If there's anything you want to say before we say goodnight, here's your opportunity.
Well, for me, I would just encourage you to go for your dreams and your passion. We only have one life here now at this place, and you want to make sure you're doing what you're aligned with in your heart. Because it's sure, I know for me, I don't work a day in my life because I love what I do.
Good. That's great. I love hearing that. Katie, do you have any final words?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm honored to be able to talk with you all. Thank you for the opportunity. And I'll just say, similar to what Cindy has mentioned, that when doing business cooperatively or socially minded in a socially minded way, as Cindy has described, it makes the work that we're doing so much more rewarding. And one of the taglines, so to speak, in the cooperative industry is to put people and planet above profit. And so, in these kinds of businesses that we're describing here, we often have a triple bottom line with that people, profit, and planet. And I hope that what we've given you today has allowed you to think about things a little differently and maybe consider a different path than you might have been on before you came.
Great. Thank you so much. And again, we learn from you all, even if we are on a different path, we can add some of these things to the path
Yeah.
or have one fund the other, and all kinds of ways we can work together for these things. Katie, Cindy, thank you so much. It's been a great evening.
Thank you. It's
All
an
right.
honor. All right.
Thank you,
Everyone have a
everyone,
nice
for being
evening.
here.
Take care.
All right. Good night, ladies. Katie,
Good
great job,
night.
especially when you lose your internet.
Oh, Lord. Oh my gosh, I was panicking in the middle of that. I was like, oh, nuts.
But we got you. That's great.